Okay, so let's reread it one more time and focus on what the problem is telling us. To make green paint, students mix yellow paint with blue paint. The table below shows how many yellow and blue drops from a dropper several students use to make the same shade of green paint. So they are telling us to complete the table. Okay, so since they gave us a table, we're going to use that for our draw portion, and they therefore want us to complete the what is missing. So what do I know versus what is missing? So I'm just going to highlight the blank so I know I need to find seven different parts to this table. And so I see every blank, I'm going to highlight yellow versus what they have given us in the problem. Okay, so let's just start at the first row in order to see what needs to be completed. So I see that it's missing the total. So how do I find the total? Well, I know that I have mixed numbers all throughout my table. I personally don't like dealing with fractions and their operations. I like decimals. So I'm actually going to take a quick minute to convert our fractions to decimals. So if I didn't know 1/2 as a decimal, I know that I need to use division. Bottom out, top in is something that you may have heard last year. Or if you remember that 2 is our divisor, therefore it goes on the outside, and 1 is on the inside. So we know that is 0.5. So I'm going to write that as 3.5 now. Same thing with 1/4. If you know it off the top of your head, thinking about your quarters, then great. If you do not, we're going to go ahead and just show this division so that we can see where we get this number from, adding a 0. And we get 5.25. Okay, and actually I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite the others since we have that as well. So 6.5, and then 3/4, thinking about our quarters, 3/4 is 75 cents. So that should be 6.75. Alrighty, so now I can add these two up pretty quickly, remembering to line up the decimals and then adding. And so I get 8.75. So that is the total milliliters of green paint that we've made. And so that's going to be our first row answer. So far, so good. And now the second row seems to be a bit more complicated because they only gave us a total of 5. So somewhere the yellow milliliters of paint and the blue milliliters of paint need to add up to equal 5. So I'm just going to make that note in my table that these two combined have to equal 5. Okay, well, how can I figure out the ratio of yellow and blue paint? So I might need to look at something else going on in our table in order to figure out the ratio. So let's pick a different pair of points. Well, they've already given me 3.5 and 5.25. So I can set that up as my ratio, remembering that this is X and this is Y. And so in order to find the ratio, I know that I divide Y over X. So 5.25 over 3.5. And so in order to find that unit rate or to see how much we're going to compare to the yellow and the blue paint is we use division. And so 3.5 going into 5.25, we got a lot of decimal review in this lesson. So if we were stuck today, we're going to refresh our memory. So we never divide by decimals, ever. We never divide by fractions, right? We never divide by pieces of numbers. We have to divide by whole numbers. And so I know that I can do that by moving the decimal one place to the right on the outside to get 35, and one place to the right on the inside because we have to keep everything balanced, right? What we do on one side has to be done to the other. And secretly, we are multiplying each of these numbers by 10 in order to convert this 3.5 into a whole number. Once we have that decimal inside, we're good to go, right? We can continue dividing like normal. And so I see that 35 goes into 52 one time. And then I'm bringing down the 5. And now here I may need to guess and check. So 35 goes into 175, let's say 5 times. Let's guess. With 5 times, 25, 15. Perfect. Right on the head. So I know that 5.25 divided by 3.5 gets me a unit rate of 1.5. So if I actually rewrote that, let me go ahead and move this over here on this side. If I rewrote my unit rate, then I know the amount of blue paint over the amount of yellow paint would be 1.5 milliliters compared to 1 milliliter of yellow paint. In fact, I can actually add that to my table here. So this is my unit rate. Okay, so our unit rate is in our table. Alrighty, so if I added 1 and 1.5 together, would I get a total of 5? Well, actually, no. 1 whole plus 1.5 wholes gives me 2.5. So that's close to 5, but it's not exact. In fact, it's actually halfway there. So what would happen if I doubled it? So if I doubled and added another one, I would get 2. So let me go ahead and just change the color here so you can keep an eye on me on what I'm doing next. So if I added another milliliter of yellow paint, I would have 2 milliliters. And if I added another 1.5, let me go ahead and just add some more scratch work over here, then I see that I get 3 whole milliliters of paint over here for the blue. And now is 2 plus 3 5? Yep, it is. So I have found 2 more pieces to my table. So I can actually erase this part here. And now it goes into my table and we are at the second row. Okay, so now looking at the third row, I know that we only have the blue paint given, which is a total of 6.75 milliliters. So how can I find the amount of yellow paint? Well, I know that in order to go from the yellow to the blue, I multiply with 1.5. So let me add that. So going this direction is multiplying by our constant multiplier of 1.5. So how can I actually use that to find the missing number of yellow paint? Well, we have to do the opposite. So instead of multiplying by 1.5, we're going to divide by 1.5. So I'm going to show my arrow this way and that we are dividing by 1.5. So 6.5 divided by 1.5. Remember, our bottom number is our divisor. Our top number is our numerator or our dividend. And so we are going to, actually I'm getting ahead of myself, we never divide by a decimal, therefore I need to make this a whole number. And in order to do that, I need to move this decimal one place to the right, as well as this number. So what we really did here was multiply by 10 to get 15 and 67.5. So now we have it set up, ready to go. So 15 goes into 64 times. Bring down the 7, bring down the 5, and then that is actually 5 times. And you can always double check my work here in a bit if you doubt me, but we get a total of 4.5 or 4.5 milliliters of yellow paint. So we can add that to our table, and we can always double check by doing the opposite and multiplying 4.5 times 1.5 to make sure that we are correct. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and continue by finding the total of our yellow and blue paint for row 3. So 4.5 plus 6.75, I've lined up my decimals, I filled in the zeros, and now I have 11.25 milliliters total for our third row. Awesome. Whew, we are almost done. So the last row, I see that we have 6.5 milliliters of yellow paint, but we are missing the blue milliliters of paint that we have to get to our total. And so with that being said, we did on the top row, we divided to work backwards, but this time we are going forwards. So we're actually going to multiply using our unit rate. So 6.5 times our unit rate of 1.5. And I'm going to just scroll down, putting my placeholder. And let's go ahead and add. There's one number behind the decimal point, one number behind the decimal point. So altogether, there needs to be 2 numbers behind our decimal point here. So we get 9.75 milliliters of yellow paint. Oh, I'm sorry, blue paint. Awesome. So if that is the case, we just now have to add them up to get our final total. Our final total. So 6.5 plus 9.75. See, I told you there was going to be a lot of decimal work. So that's 15, that's 16. And we get a total of 16.25 milliliters total. Alrighty, so I hope that we remembered our decimal operations. We refreshed our memory because we're going to also be completing a table like this as a guided practice and then independent practice. And then you're right, our exit ticket.